Now, I don't know if you know this, but over $20 billion will be wagered on the Super Bowl this year. However, most bettors are focused on the wrong plays. So in this video, we'll be breaking down 10 key picks that you need to know for the Super Bowl before the game begins. And we're starting with one of the best receivers in all of football, definitely the Eagles' #1 wide receiver, A.J. Brown. And he has a prop in the marketplace right now, if we were to pull it up right here, of 5 receptions. Now, do we like the over? Do we like the under? Well, let's break it down a little bit for A.J. Brown, who the first 2 playoff games struggled, but then came back to life last week in the NFC Championship. If we pull up Player Profiler and look at his game logs, this is week 1. You see he had 5 catches, week 2, 6, 5 right here. So if we focus on this column and you scroll down, you'll see a lot of 5+ catch games, right? Basically almost every single one of them, and it's the majority of them. In 73% of his games this year, Brown has had at least 5 or more receptions. And now entering the Super Bowl, he'll of course be taking on the Kansas City Chiefs, and this is as good of a matchup as it gets because the Chiefs actually play man coverage, man-to-man defense at a top 10 rate in the NFL, and that is good news for A.J. Brown because, believe it or not, Brown ranks #1 in the entire NFL across all positions at beating man coverage and producing against man coverage this season. So this is legitimately the best matchup he can find in a game where he's coming into this one as a slight underdog. The Eagles should throw more than usual. We're taking the more than 5 receptions for A.J. Brown. Now that is the first pick we're taking in this video for the first entry we are building. Let's get into now the next one. And it has to do with his quarterback, Jalen Hurts, in this one. Jalen Hurts currently has a bunch of props, of course, in the market. The one that I'm looking at right now is his rush attempts. It's currently set at 9.5 rush attempts, which is a high number, especially if you look at his recent game logs. But in that most recent game log, he actually went over this number. He had 10 rush attempts in this game. But now here's the most important part of this. In this game, according to Fantasy Life, if we pull it up right here on their stats, we scroll over to this right here where it says DES, that's designed rush attempts. He had 9 design rush attempts in this game, meaning that they knew that he was going to run the ball on that play. 9. That is the 3rd most he's seen in a game all season. And this is important to bring up because it means that his knee is healthy. He came into the NFC Championship, maybe going to wear a brace. He ended up not doing that, and then they ran 9 design runs for the guy. He looks fine. Not to mention, he now has 2 weeks to rest that knee, so we're going to be taking the more than 9.5 rush attempts for Jalen Hurts. So we have 2 Eagles plays in here. We have 2 overs. Now let's get to a Kansas City Chiefs player. And I want to look at the veteran wide receiver that they acquired midseason in Deandre Hopkins, where he currently has a line, if you see right here, of 16.5 receiving yards in the market is what we got it at. It's now moved to 15.5 receiving yards, but the question becomes, do we like the over or the under on this? Well, let's break it down. Because we talked about this in last week's video, but in the playoffs so far, Hopkins has been seeing less usage, and that continued in the AFC Championship against the Bills. I'll pull up Fantasy Life's data right here again. These are the 2 playoff games, week 20 and week 21. He only ran 13 routes in the divisional round against the Texans. That, for example, like most wide receivers, including other guys on his team like Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown, are running 25 to 30 routes, so not even half the routes on the team. Okay, so he runs 13 routes. This then reduces to just 11 routes in the AFC Championship, the most important game of the year. He actually sees less usage in this game, and more specifically, that was the lowest usage he's seen all season long in their most important game. Now, to make matters even worse for DeAndre Hopkins, let's look at Juju Smith-Schuster. In the AFC Championship game, he ran 22 routes, 2 times as many routes as DeAndre Hopkins. Juju Smith-Schuster was obviously the wide receiver 3 behind Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown in this game. And then when you factor in Travis Kelce, a 4th receiving option there, Hopkins is at best the 5th receiving option on this team. There's just no room for this guy right now, and he might even be injured as well. Because if you recall, all the way back at the end of July 31st, 2024, it came out that he actually had a tear in his knee. He tore his medial, his MCL, as you can see right here. He did not get surgery, so he had a partial tear basically all season long. Who knows? We find out usually after the season if this affected him. Maybe it got torn a little bit more. Maybe that's what's happening right here. We don't know. But what we do know is that this veteran receiver in Hopkins is just not involved right now. We got him at 16.5 receiving yards. I still like it at 15.5 to take the under here. So now that's our 3rd play that we're putting into this one. Let's finish up this entry with a couple of more picks, and then we'll get into our 2nd entry that we'll build. We'll stay on the Chiefs side of the ball, and we'll look at Kareem Hunt in this one, who just had a very solid in terms of usage AFC Championship game. He now comes into this game with an over-under of 11.5 rush attempts, 11.5 carries, whatever you want to call it. Which side of this do we like? Well, if we look at his recent game logs, you'll see that he just had 17 carries, 64 yards. He started this game off hot as well. I think he had 4 carries for 34 yards to start the game. So a very good usage overall. So 17 carries, and you see the lines at 11.5 for the Super Bowl. I know a ton of people, I've already seen the numbers, are taking the over, and that's a mistake. Because those 17 carries need more context. For starters, let's just look at his first couple of carries of the game. Isaiah Pacheco starts the game, he gets the first carry. Okay. Then Hunt comes in, he sees an 8-yard run. Hunt comes in, sees a 12-yard touchdown. Then on the next drive, if we were to scroll down here, we scroll a little bit more, we get Hunt again seeing a 12-yard run right here, 12 yards. So he's coming into this game having an 8-yard run, a 12-yard run for a touchdown, and another 12-yard run. So he has a hot hand to start with. But to make matters even worse for Isaiah Pacheco, he comes into here, right here, Patrick Mahomes, a fumble in this one. Now it looks like it's a Mahomes fumble, but let's actually check out the footage. And if you watch the game, you know what happens here. It was a botched exchange. As you can see right here, a botched exchange between the two of them. I'm going to say this is probably not Patrick Mahomes' fault, right? Of course, we can give him some blame in this one, but ever since that botched exchange right there, Isaiah Pacheco saw 2 carries the rest of the game and just 4 total touches the rest of the game. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that what happened there early in the game, that botched exchange on the second drive, kind of got him in the doghouse a little bit bench, which gave Hunt more opportunities. But now with 2 weeks to game plan, I do believe the more explosive player and the home run hitter in Isaiah Pacheco is going to be more involved than the 5 carries he saw last game when he had that fumble or that botched handoff. So I think we're going to see more of a balance in this one. And if that's the case, I think there's a pretty good chance that these guys split the backfield carries. Maybe they each see 8, 9, maybe even 10 each, but I don't think Hunt's going to go for 12 plus. And because of that, I've actually taken his under 11.5 rush attempts right now. I also think you could take, if you want to take both of these or just the other side of this, and take the more than Isaiah Pacheco at 6. He had at least 6 rush attempts, by the way, Pacheco, in every single regular season game that he started and played in this year. Now, there's one more pick that I want to put into this specific entry that we're building, and it has to do with Patrick Mahomes. And look, this one is just as free as it gets, because right now that's a no-brainer over on Prize Picks. They have a promotion of a half a passing yard for Mahomes. So yes, if he throws for literally 1 yard, you win. They want you to get this freebie. They want you to come on their platform, so you might as well take advantage of a great offer. And to make it even better, when you sign up with code SAL23, or you just scan the QR code that's on the screen right now, they'll actually give you a free $50 to take these picks with, or any picks you want, and play for the Super Bowl. You can tell your friends as well. You each get a free $50 when you scan this QR code or use SAL23. It's linked in the description below. So to recap our first entry, and we're going to build another one after this, we have the Hunt play on the under, the Hopkins under, the AJ Brown over receptions. I love that at 5. At 5.5, it gets a little bit sketchy. The Mahomes free play, and the Hurts at 9.5 rush attempts right there. I put $25 to win $425 on this one with that free Mahomes play in there. We only have to win 4 of these, not the full 5, so that's great. Again, if you want to get the free Mahomes play and a free $50 bet to take these picks with, well, go ahead and use code SAL23 with the QR code on the screen, or click the link in the description below. Be sure to let all your friends at the Super Bowl party know as well. Why not get a free offer and a free 50? Now let's kick off our second entry that we'll be entering for this game, and we got to go to Travis Kelce, because why wouldn't you be taking a Travis Kelce play in this game when it looks so good? Because right now Travis Kelce has a line in the marketplace of 6 receptions, and oh my god, is this such a great line. And everybody is just a prisoner of recency bias. A couple of weeks ago he has a great game, everybody wants to take his overs. Last week against the Bills he has a down game, everybody's like, he's not going to go over. Literally recency bias. But let's just look at some things like his playoff game logs, right? When he gets activated in the postseason, no matter his age. If we scroll through this, yes, he only had 2 catches last game in the playoffs against the Bills. If we scroll through his game logs, this column right here, but then let's look at it. 7, 9, 11. This is dating back across different years. Okay, only 5, 7, 6, 7, 14, 10, 8, right? If you scroll back through this, he has at least 6 catches in 9 of his last 11 postseason games, but that's not all. Kelce's already played in 4 Super Bowls, and in those big games, the biggest game of his career, he's averaging 7.8 receptions in the Super Bowl. And I should mention that the Eagles, since they lost Nakobe Dean midway through the game against the Packers in the wild card round, they've really struggled to defend tight ends. In the divisional round against the Rams, Tyler Higbee, who was coming off of a catastrophic injury just a couple of weeks before, all of a sudden looked fully healthy and great, having 7 catches, 54 yards, and a touchdown. Again, we care about the receptions here, 7. Last week, an older tight end, who's like one of the oldest, I think the oldest tight end in the league, he goes out there, has 11 receptions, 104 yards, absolutely dominates. The best player on the entire week in terms of receiving yards for the conference championships games was the tight end Zach Ertz against the Eagles, right? So again, this is only 2 games, but we actually have a specific reason as to why their defense has gotten a little bit weaker against tight ends. Part of it, of course, is the game script. They're playing with the lead in some of these games, but part of it is because they lost a very important piece of their defense in Nakobe Dean. He's not going to be playing in the Super Bowl. He's done for the season. So when we know that this is the most important game of the year and there's actually a beneficial matchup here for Kelce, we're going to go over his 6 receptions. Next up, we're going to go back to Jalen Hurts, because there's another play that I like for Jalen Hurts this week, and it's a play that basically, if you've been taking this for the last 3 years, you've been printing money. It's Jalen Hurts over under a half a rushing or receiving touchdown, so you get that nice little cop out if there is some weird receiving play in this game. But if you didn't already know, Jalen Hurts scores a lot of touchdowns. He had 3 in the NFC Championship. He now has 18 rushing touchdowns this year. And here's the proof right here, 18 rushing touchdowns across 17 completed starts. So more than 1 a game right now. And then if you wanted to look at, okay, what's this guy doing specifically in his postseason career? 9 rushing touchdowns in his postseason career. That's 9 in 8 games. So again, whether it's the regular season this year, his playoff career in general, he's averaging over more than 1 rushing touchdown per game. And here's something that's worth considering. He comes into this this game against the Chiefs as a slight underdog, right? It's just a 1.5 point spread, 2 points, 1 point on some sports book. Either way, this game should remain close. And in close games this year, and that can be defined as a game within a 3-point spread, Hurts is averaging over 1 rushing touchdown per game. So let's take the more than a half a rushing touchdown or receiving, right? It kind of gets both of these on Prize Picks, which is nice. You get that extra little bonus. This is going to be one of the most popular plays in the market. Every single person is going to be taking it, which normally means it's not the greatest of bets, but for this one, it does check out. The next entry we want to talk about here or the next leg of this entry we're building, is another tight end on the Chiefs, and that is Noah Gray. Their backup, their tight end number 2. He currently has a prop in the market that's set at over under 1.5 receptions. But which side of this do we like? Well, to break it down, let's look at his recent usage. Now, for the most part this season, he's been running like 15 routes a game. You can see that in week 17. In week 18, he only ran 4, but that game didn't matter. The starters got pulled early, including Noah Gray, who was viewed as an important piece of the offense. However, his usage has somewhat decreased, more specifically in their most important game in the AFC Championship. Now, maybe this was just a matchup-based thing, but if we see right here in the AFC Championship, just 7 routes run, which if you take out this game in week 18 that didn't matter and the starters got pulled, this was the lowest usage he had all year. It led to just 0 targets. If you have no targets, you're not going to have any receptions, right? So this is something to consider. We also talked about Travis Kelce having a nice matchup, performing well in the playoffs and the Super Bowl just in general. And if we expect Kelce to see more usage in the Super Bowl and these other wide receivers, Xavier Worthy, have been playing well, Marquise Brown's only getting healthier, it means less opportunities for a guy like Noah Gray. I would probably be surprised if he only ran 7 routes in the Super Bowl, but I wouldn't be surprised if this number was like 10 to 12 and he only saw 0, 1, maybe at most 2 targets in this game. So because of that, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for him in this one, I think both their running backs will get involved for the Chiefs as well. We're going to be taking the less than 1.5 receptions. Next up, I want to talk about a kicking prop and a kicker in Jake Elliott, the Eagles kicker. These kicking props, usually kickers, you know, they get kind of forgotten. Right now, he currently has a prop in the market. It was 6.5. That's what we got it at. It is now at 7. Do we like the over or the under on this? Well, let's break it down. If we look at his game logs, right, just to see what he's been doing recently, these are the points that he scored recently right here. As recent as the NFC Championship, he went over this, 10 in the divisional round, 10 points in the wildcard round. So he's gone over this in all 3 playoff games, but you can keep scrolling here, right? The end of the regular season, he has 8 points. He has 8 points right there, 11, 15, 9. So in 7 straight games, he's gone over this number of 6.5, of 7, and now he has done it in all 3 playoff games as well. To make it even better, he has at least 7 or more points in 75% of his games this season. Earlier this year, he kind of had his ups and downs, but he's been very good the second half of the season and definitely into the postseason. We have this game, like we mentioned, has just a 1-point spread. In close games this year, he's averaging 7.2 kicking points per game, so we do like that. I mentioned that his prop went from 6.5 to 7 points. Even though it's gone up to 7, I still like taking the over at 7 because you will get the push if it does not hit, if it lands right on 7. In this one, it's a nice spot. A close game kind of just breeds potential for kicking those field goals a little bit more than usual as well. So there's a couple of plays that we have into our second entry, but we still have to finish it up with some really strong ones. So we're going to go back to Patrick Mahomes here because I do think there's a prop in the market that looks really good for him right now, and it's his rushing yards. It's set at 32.5 rushing yards right now. The question is, do we like the over or the under? Well, if we look at Mahomes this year, if we go back to what we looked at earlier on Fantasy Life for Hurts and we look at it for Mahomes, these designed rush attempts, you can see he's gotten more in the postseason. 5 design rush attempts, 4 design rush attempts. Again, kneel downs kind of get thrown into this, but last week he had 2 design rush attempts in the AFC Championship, which was the first time he's had 2 design rush attempts in a game in like, I think 5 years. So obviously in the most important moments, they were getting him on the move a little bit more. So that bodes well if you're looking to take the over on Mahomes because they obviously want to use that as some sort of strategy here, and it worked out last game. But is that something that we can rely on in the Super Bowl? Because of course, now Mahomes has to take on the Philadelphia Eagles, who have arguably the best run defense and overall defense in the NFL. But more specifically, this season, they're only the Philadelphia Eagles allowing 19 rushing yards per game to opposing quarterbacks, despite facing Jaden Daniels 3 times when you factor in the postseason, and even Lamar Jackson. Despite facing the most elite rushing quarterbacks 4 times this year, they're still allowing under 20 rushing yards per game. So when we put this context into play, I'm actually going to be taking the less than 32.5 rushing yards for Mahomes. I think that there's a good chance that he runs the ball 4 or 5 times in this game. A couple of kneel downs as well, just nothing breaks too big because that's how good this Eagles defense is. So now we have our second entry built. We have the Jake Elliott kicking points, the Hurts over a rushing touchdown, Noah Gray's under, Mahomes under rushing yards, and then the Kelce over receptions. We have this all in there. And again, of course, make sure you're also taking advantage of this free Patrick Mahomes play of a half a passing yard because it is literally a freebie. It is a no-brainer. You can take that free play and get the free $50 bet over on Prize Picks when you use code SAL23. Again, it's linked below. The QR code has been on the screen as well. Be sure to share it in your group chats or at your Super Bowl party so you can all take advantage of that free $50. Now, we will have more videos this week, but there are 2 that I'm considering early on for some more plays. The first one has to do with Saquon Barkley, of course, the man who's just dominating the postseason right now. He currently has his rushing yards right now in the marketplace are set at 114.5, which is a lot against a good Chiefs team, but I really have to hold off here. I'm leaning to take the the over, but I'm holding off until we see what happens with their offensive line injuries, right? They had injuries going into that game. Lane Johnson was banged up, playing out of position because of that. So I want to see what happens these next 2 weeks, make sure those guys are healthy before I settle in on a Saquon play. And the other thing I want to point out is that Xavier Worthy, depending on the book that you're using right now on Prize Picks, his line is set at 5.5 receptions. I'm holding off on that right now. But as you can see right here from this tweet that I put out earlier in the week on my Sal Bets account, not my fantasy account, but my Bets account on Twitter, be sure to follow it if you're on Twitter. He is player prop opened at 5 receptions, right? And he has at least 5 catches in 7 of his last 8 games. The second half of the season, the first round rookie for the Chiefs, the receiver is playing great right now. So if you can still find it at 5 receptions on any of the books that you use, that's a bet that I would be taking at over 5 receptions. I just wasn't able to get it on Prize Picks. They bumped it to 5.5 pretty quick. So there's a couple of plays that I'm considering. We'll have even more plays, more entries. I'm currently building up a play to try and turn $20 into over $1,500 that we'll share in a video next week. So make sure to hit the subscribe button so you're notified of when that comes out, and be sure to use that free or that QR code to get your free $50 bet on Prize Picks. Code SAL23, also linked down below. I'll see you all in the next one. Best of luck on your Super Bowl bets if I don't see you again.